welcome to our Founders Panel. I'm Dr. Debra Pellegrino. I am the Academic Dean of the Panuska College of Professional Studies at the University of Scranton. And I have the privilege and the honor to host the 20th, this is our 20th year of the United States Conference on Disability. And so this, in fact, is our third year of a collaborative impact where 13 counties in Northeast and Northcentral Pennsylvania have come together. And our goal has been to explore autism and to make a difference and to show how can we look at autism across the spectrum and at the same time build an inclusive communities. And it started with so many wonderful people that I've just personally have grown because of the teamwork of these professionals. So let me take a brief moment just to introduce our panelists to you. And then later, as we proceed, you will see just how beautiful this project really has unfolded for the last 3 years. And when I say it has been a wonderful collaborative teamwork happenings, it's been a true blessing for me. So my first person I would like to introduce to you today is Mr. John Cosgrove. And John, can you tell them your correct title and just briefly your title and why you're on this panel?
Sure, absolutely, Dr. Pellegrino. Thanks very much. My name is John Cosgrove, and I'm the Executive Director of AllOne Foundation and Charities. We're a relatively new philanthropic entity in Northeastern and North Central Pennsylvania. And what we strive to do is to have a measurable impact on improving the lives of our neighbors here in the region by increasing and improving access to healthcare.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, John. And now I'd like to introduce to you the next panelist. And he was with me about 5 years ago when we had this vision for Northeast and North Central Pennsylvania, Mr. Jim Martin, who's Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Friendship House. So Jim, can you tell us briefly a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Deborah, thank you very much. You're right. It seems like a long time ago, but was part of that original group that got together, and it's been going strong forward ever since. I'm the Vice President, Chief Operating Officer at Friendship House, which is a large behavioral healthcare provider located in Northeastern PA, but serving Southeast, North Central, and Central Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Jim. And it has been a true pleasure to always be at the table with you. And then we have 5 family-friendly hubs in this collaborative. In fact, the University of Scranton stands as the executive hub, but I was blessed to meet this wonderful young woman from Central Pennsylvania, Williamsport, PA, I believe exactly. And Emily Camerer, would you please tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Central PA?
Yes, absolutely. My name's Emily Camerer. I'm the Director of Community Outreach at Hope Enterprises. And about 3 years ago, the collaborative asked us to be one of their 5 resource hubs located in Northeastern, and we being the most centrally located, representing both Lycoming and Clinton counties, along with Children's Service Center in Hazleton, Misericordia University, East Stroudsburg University, and then University of Scranton. We were really tasked with looking at our local communities, trying to assess the needs and then strategize how to come up with solutions for the gaps in services that we found in each of our locations and also collectively.
Thank you, Emily. She really is a ball of fire and has made such a difference with this project. And then Ann Gillerlane, I tell you, as the years progress, and this is our 3rd year, I really see her many talents. She's the Director of Program Development and Grants for Goodwill Industries of Northeast PA, and she's like the energized bunny. She never says no, and she says, is there grants out there? Let me be part of this initiative. I want to do more. And so Ann, tell us a little bit about what you're doing for this collaborative.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that generous introduction. So as Dr. Pellegrino mentioned, I work for Goodwill Industries of Northeastern Pennsylvania, and my primary role is program development and grant writing. And when the AllOne started creating this collaborative and had this idea for what they were doing, we were very, very interested in participating in it. And we're delighted that we've been a part of it for the last 3 years. And we've had a variety of signature projects that we have participated in. The first one individually, and the next two we have collaborated within the collaborative, which has been a real exciting journey for us. And being creative and innovative in different ways of how to support folks in this who have autism. We've looked at the life spectrum, like how to support families and children who are really young and the early education part all the way through young adulthood. So we've done a variety of different kinds of things that we've been very, very excited about, have learned a lot, and best of all, we've been having a lot of fun doing it.
Thank you, Ann. And last but not least of our panelists, this is like a project within a project. He just continues to say, we can do more, we can do more. And from the executive director of Greater Carbondale YMCA, I give you Jason Mackie. So Jason.
Thanks, Deb. Just introduce myself, Jason Mackie. Like Dr. Pellegrino said, executive director of the Greater Carbondale YMCA. We're part of this collaborative as one of our programs is the A-Team. A-Team is a group of older teenagers, young adults with autism. We started this, not too long ago. A part of this collaborative is about a year ago where we've been part of it, but been learning so much throughout just participating in all the different organizations, and definitely has helped us relay resources to our participants and their families. So thank you so much for letting me be part of this.
Oh, Jason, we're so happy that you could join us. And now I would like to go back to our executive director of the AllOne Foundation and Charities, who is a partner with us with this ACE initiative. He'll tell you a little bit about the history of the ACE grant and then how he's even taken it on a national level with the Harvard study. So, Mr. Cosgrove, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Pellegrino, and thus ends our formality. Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
for your energy and your focus throughout this entire project. What I'd like to do over the next couple of minutes is to talk a little bit about ACE, which is the Autism Collaborative Centers of Excellence. Talk a little bit about its history, where it came from, its ups, its downs, its all arounds. And I'd like to also talk about the execution of ACE, for lack of a better term, how we took this idea and put it on paper and then took it from the paper to actual frontline service provision, taking it from the poetry to the prose, as it were. And then finally, I'd like to talk about ACE and about the work of ACE in the context of actually achieving that all elusive collective impact. The fact that by working together, organizations can in fact tackle some of the most seemingly intractable problems by working together. They can actually access more resources than they could as individual organizations to achieve that collective impact. But the most important thing is that collective impact is actually doable. It's actually achievable. And I'd like to tell you about the experience that I had in the context of the executive education program at the Kennedy School at Harvard, when we really zeroed in on pursuing greater impact through partnerships and collaboration and networking. So those are the three things that I want to cover over the next couple of minutes. But then most importantly, we want to talk to the real experts, the folks on the panel that took this idea and executed it and is executing it so effectively. So ACE itself, and in the context of AllOne Foundation and Charities, it's actually one of the 5 impact areas that our leaders have directed us to use our resources to address: mental health and behavioral health, improved access to healthcare for women and children, We do have the pretty extensive autism services program. We also have a regional partnership focused on opioid solutions. And our fifth and most recent impact area is on food security. So when we say impact area, my leaders say to me and my team, go out there, talk to the leaders and the experts in these areas all throughout our 13 county region and pick their brains, see what they're doing, see how they're addressing some of these problems in a creative and an innovative way. So that's what we try to do on a day-to-day basis. And very early on in our life as a philanthropic entity here in Northeast and Northcentral Pennsylvania, the autism services concept came to the forefront. Why? Because like so many other of our family and friends and neighbors, it's very personal for us. We have friends or loved ones, even folks in our own families that are on the spectrum, that have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. So it's very personal to the leadership of AllOne Foundation and Charities to see what we can do, to see what we can do with the resources that we've been blessed with, and how can we have a measurable effect, a measurable impact on improving the delivery of services to folks with ASD and those who are caring for them. Well, that was a beautiful 3-minute overview of what we were expected to do. The execution of it, maybe not so easy, but successful, which is the really great message that we can deliver today. So I did exactly what my bosses told me to do. I reached out to the experts. I got 5 organizations to come and talk to us and really kind of dive deep on if you had the certain number of resources, how could you really make a difference in the delivery, improving the delivery of services? And you would think that would be a 1 meeting, 2 meeting, 3-minute meeting conversation. It stretched over, I don't even want to remember how long the period was, but let me just say this as a quick aside on the reality of collaboratives. There were more than a few times when some of those leaders were saying, this isn't going anywhere, I'm leaving the table. But then the side conversations would happen and they'd say, wait a minute, it looks like we can actually access these resources. Let's stay at the table and clunk these differences out. And they happily did. As those conversations continued, it became obvious that we were going to need more resources than we were able to bring to the table. So those experts came up with really 9 objectives as to what they could do with the proper resources. And another quick aside, when they put the math behind the needed resources, it was somewhat close to triple what we were able to bring to the table at that time. So we couldn't throw down the gauntlet to the service providers and say, you need to work together to achieve this collective impact. That's when our leaders picked up the mantle and said, well, we'll do what we're asking them to do. We'll put together a collaborative of funders. We'll put together, we'll take this shell of an idea that the experts have given us with these 9 objectives, and we'll see amongst our colleagues in the resource provider world what we can come up with. Again, to make a very long story short, we were able to come up with 6 other foundations, 6 other philanthropic entities because of the work that those experts were able to put down on paper at that table. We were able to convince other resources that this was worth the investment. And in fact, everybody stepped up, which actually brought more people to the table, believe it or not, because we started with 5, then we went to 7 organizations, then we went to 11 organizations, then we went to 17 organizations. And today the Autism Collaborative Centers of Excellence, the ACE program, is made up of 24 organizations. We asked for a few things in return, keeping in mind our objective of achieving collective impact against those 9 objectives. We asked that these organizations consistently communicate, that they have monthly conference calls and quarterly in-person meetings. Of course, pre-COVID, it was quarterly in-person meetings, but in execution, it's been quarterly Zoom meetings. And then once a year, everybody gets together in this forum, the U.S. Conference of Disabilities, so that we can constantly change or exchange ideas, and we can constantly share what it really means to execute these things on the front lines. And I'm going to leave it to our panelists to talk about those examples of those in real life and in real time. But overall, it did seem, as we executed these 9 objectives, it really did seem that by working together, we could actually chip away at achieving these objectives. And I've been in more conferences than I can care to name where the speaker just gives lists and lists and lists, and how boring that can be. But I'm going to break the rule and give you a list, at least an overview of the 9 objectives of ACE, because I think it's really important in the context of the discussion on collective impact that everybody was focused on these 9 objectives in such a way that it was clear and achievable all throughout. So the first one you've already heard about was to create these family-friendly community hubs. At first, we were thinking, well, it's, at that point, it was 2018, 2019, whatever it was, and this is the real world, so let's just do it virtual. But we heard back from those we strive to serve, and they were like, well, no, we really do need a physical storefront place to go, and not all the time, but at least know it's there where we can go see people in person, exchange ideas as we provide these services. So we created 5 family-friendly virtual and live community hubs. The next objective was to, even though it seems obvious, you have to clearly state these objectives. It was to establish a coordinated network of qualified ASD providers. The next objective was to deliver a full array of services that support the folks in the ASD community. As somebody's already mentioned, from early intervention to adult services. You have to address the spectrum of services for the spectrum of life of folks with ASD. Next, we're striving to provide a coordinated and comprehensive approach for identifying and assessing folks are on the spectrum, and then have a coordinated and comprehensive approach to providing treatments and services. Next, it was important to us to promote evidence-based practices and actual standards in the provision of these services, because as the experts know on the front lines, some folks just throw up a shingle and say they provide ASD or services, autism services to folks with ASD, and there's no real standard or no real evidence base behind some of their practices. Next, we definitely wanted to address and enhance the graduate and undergraduate training opportunities for folks that are interested in applied behavioral analysis and other evidence-based successful approaches to treating ASD. Next, we wanted to, and this was another really important part of listening to the experts who are listening to the people they strive to serve. We wanted to provide respite care for folks with ASD, and we wanted to provide respite care for those that are providing services or either loved ones or otherwise. So respite care is a huge objective of the ACE initiative. Next, we wanted to provide a consistent, seamless approach to tracking the services for those folks from early intervention to adult services, because very often individuals can get lost in the provision of services. And then finally, we wanted to provide a forum for the professional collection of data so that we can learn from the implementation of all of these ideas. So those are the 9 objectives of ACE, and those objectives, those clearly stated objectives, is what all 24 organizations that are part of the ACE initiative are focused on a day-to-day basis. So the good news is that after 3 years of implementation and 3 years of focusing on these objectives, I'd like everybody to believe that we knew this all along and that our genius is based on strategy and all of that. But very, very honestly, the genius comes from the actual implementation of the collective impact model. The fact that they all are constantly talking with each other, that some organic ideas had kind of sprouted out of the ACE initiative beyond the objectives that we have, that there's always this culture of sharing, this culture of learning that goes on pretty consistently in the ACE initiative. So that's not to say that it's been seamless and that it's been perfect all along, and that, we did, after all, have a global pandemic dropped in on top of us. So we had to be somewhat agile, and we had to be somewhat flexible in how we continued to meet the objectives, but also to continue to provide the services. And I have to tell you, having this forum in place, having the ACE initiative in place, where that consistent communication, that sharing of ideas and goals was in place already, I think, I don't want to put words in any panelist's mouth, but I think having that forum in place actually helped in continuing the best we could to provide services to those who needed it throughout. So it hasn't been without its challenges, but the successes far, far, far outweigh them. For instance, we'll hear from Jason a little bit later on, where there's a collaborative within the collaborative that has sprouted out in order to meet that objective for respite care and socialization. And we'll hear more about that a little bit later. So my colleagues on the panel know that I definitely need to have limits. So I'm timing myself here. And in the last 3 minutes, I want to tell our viewers and our listeners about the experience that I had. Very, very fortunately, the leaders of AllOne Foundation and Charities made it possible for me to participate in the nonprofit leadership executive education program at the Kennedy School at Harvard University. And that's a whole other conference that I'd have to use to talk about the benefits of that particular program. But Professor James Honan oversaw the learning experience that I participated in, that was specifically entitled Pursuing Greater Impact Through Partnerships, Collaborations, and Networks. And the information that Jim Honan had shared with our group was just invaluable in the development of my understanding of nonprofit leadership for certain, but specifically on collective impact and pursuing collective impact and achieving collective impact. He broke it down in such a way that as the information was being shared with me, I couldn't think of anything but the ACE initiative that we were in the throes of executing on the front lines in Northeast and Northcentral Pennsylvania. And specifically, what Professor Honan shared with us, I want to share with you, because it's really important that this structure, this framework, can actually be applied to whatever in seemingly intractable concern or problem that anybody is pursuing. That if you have the common agenda, everybody understands it, everybody shares that common agenda, you're on your way to actually achieving collective impact. Mutually reinforcing activities was the next thing that we learned about. Mutually reinforcing activities. So even though all 24 of those organizations that I mentioned before go about the advancement of their missions in different ways, they all have mutually reinforcing activities. Everybody is in specific to ACEs behind these objectives, but specific to the advancement of their own missions, they strive to serve folks on the spectrum in innovative and creative and excellent ways. And as mentioned before, what was part of the Kennedy School experience was continuous communication and how important continuous communication is. So those initial experts of ACE said, we have to keep meeting, we have to keep talking, we have to keep sharing. So those monthly conference calls and those quarterly in-person meetings and our annual forum here is a great example of that continuous communication. Next in the collective impact achievement model was backbone support. And that's where we come in. That's where we, the philanthropic community in Northeastern Pennsylvania come in. We provide the backbone support. Remember when the experts were telling us we needed more resources, it was AllOne Foundation and Charities leadership that went out and found the other areas of support for resources. So backbone support is vital to achieving collective impact. And finally, shared measurement. What Professor Honan told us is that not at the end looking back, but all throughout, everybody has to be dedicated to the concept of shared measurement. Why? Well, because not only do we want to know how successful we're being against those objectives, but we also want to be agile if we need to be. And we have to say, well, we measured that and it didn't quite get where we want it to go. It didn't move the needle the way we had hoped to. So let's look at that and readjust in real time. And that stems from everyone's commitment to shared measurement. So I can definitely share all of this information with you, Deb, if folks participating in the conference want to have that framework. I'm happy to share it with you with the permission of, let me make sure I get this right, with the copyright of the president and fellows of Harvard College, because I don't want to get in trouble here. But that's my 20-minute overview. And I just want to kind of close out my part in two ways. Number one, I want to express gratitude, Deb, to you and to everybody involved in the conference, because beyond great information, this is one of those consistent forums that we rely on in the ACE initiative to help us to achieve that collective impact. And then the last thing I want to say before we open it up to the real life execution of all of this is I just want to say that it's achievable. This is doable. You know, we hear a lot in the disabilities world. We hear a lot in the provision of services in the disabilities world. I hear a lot in the nonprofit community that collaboratives are messy, that there's too much head clunking, there's too much energy expended without enough of a return on it. And I was in the nonprofit management world for a few decades before I joined the philanthropic world. And believe me when I tell you, I can understand that frustration. But the ACE initiative and the folks we're about to hear from are living, breathing proof that collective impact is not only achievable, but it's actually desirable in providing services to seemingly intractable problems. So I'm happy to either turn it back to you, Deb, or
Well,
What
who do you think would be the first person that could connect when you're talking about, the common agenda? And who would you like to go to, John?
I think it makes sense to hear from a hub first. So I think, Emily, I'll put you on the spot first,
Okay.
and reminding our conference participants that one of the main objectives of ACE was to create these family-friendly community hubs all throughout our region here. So Emily, why don't I turn it over to you at this point?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm one of 5 hubs. The executive hub that's leading us is University of Scranton. And since the inception, when we all started coming together literally to the table, I remember it being such a huge, overwhelming group of providers going around spouting out their titles, where they're coming from. And I'm like, this is so much bigger than I realized it was going to be. And how are we all, it seems like we're all so vast in where we're coming from, and what we're here to provide. It was such a big picture. It was super exciting and also very overwhelming. Like, how are we going to start getting into the weeds with this? But sure enough, with a couple meetings under our belt, people getting a little bit more comfortable with each other, the hub started getting together. And we started to, right off the bat, notice the consistencies between gaps in services. If it was something that we were feeling in Lycoming County, we would hear it being echoed in Scranton, or it would be something we'd hear echoed in a different way, but similarly in Hazleton. So it didn't take long for us to start getting creative. And also each of us, because we all come from different kinds of nonprofit providers, we each had our niche thing. For Hope, for instance, we worked specifically with adults. So in my head, I'm thinking about filling the gaps in services for adults. For the Hazleton Hub, it's a children's service center. So they're thinking more about children. So we all were coming with these broad concepts and trying to understand how can we do something collectively, but separately applying it. And we've not only come up with, ways to try to help share resources and also share connections. Like if we knew that, we have these parents that want to get together, let's call our YMCA, see what they have going on. Maybe we can start bringing them into this, or saying, we have these daycare centers that need more help. Who among us are educators, and how could we create something? Like the raising of hands would go up there. Like we basically just all started throwing that together, and with the eagerness of knowing we all were motivated to figure this out, the hubs kind of helped spark those conversations. But through the signature projects and all the other, the diversity of the collaborative was where we started really getting creative solutions for those, and where the signature projects really started fleshing out with.
Excellent. And how about you? What do you see on the front lines?
Well, I think Emily did a really great introduction talking about the hubs and how people started to, when they started having smaller meetings and identifying resources, what was missing, what kinds of things each community needed, and the collective expertise of the members of the hub. I think we really did the exact same thing on the signature project side, as we were really afforded that first year of many opportunities to meet either face-to-face or via Zoom. I think some of us knew each other from days gone by and were familiar faces. And then because of the wide geographic scope that we're covering, there were a lot of us that did not know each other at all. And the conferences, the meetings, the lunches that we went to when we first started out meeting together, those were all really nice opportunities, formal and informal opportunities for us to dialogue and talk and just say hello and get to know each other. And I know that like Goodwill's journey through this has really been reflective of that call for collaboration and call for partnership, which was really a big message that AllOne gave us in the beginning of it. And throughout the different bumping into each other and talking to people, we really had a full year of, in addition to the monthly meetings that we had as a collaborative, there were 4 or 5 of us that started meeting monthly to just brainstorm, like, what is it that, who are we, what do we do, what are we good at doing, and what's missing? And Emily alluded to that a little bit about the early childhood advocacy project. There were a couple of us that had extensive experience in working in early intervention and early childhood education and knew some of the struggles that were going on in that discipline to support children with autism. We also had some really great clinical backgrounds and advocacy backgrounds and parent educators, parents of children with ASD. So we had a lot of different perspectives, and that led us to another project that was really outside of the box and was really, we were so delighted and excited that AllOne decided to fund it, because when you said go outside of the box and do something innovative, I'm not sure you were really bargaining for something as out of the box and innovative as what our therapeutic tabletop role-playing game project is. And that has been such an exciting opportunity for us to do something really different, really engage with transitional youth, like really from pretty much the ages of 12 to 30. So we've had younger teenagers all the way to young adults, and engage with them in a very playful, safe way that has really focused on developing social skills and communication skills, pulling in yet another community partner that's outside of the collaborative and relying on their expertise. It's been a really great journey, and you know, Emily and I could talk more about that later too. Emily and I could probably talk about that for as long as you can talk, John.
We really can. Yeah.
So we're delighted and happy to go into more detail about that. But in the interest of time, I'll cut myself off now. But those signature projects are really a reflection of AllOne's message of please collaborate, please partner, please think in terms of like geographically how we can spread ourselves out, how we can be stronger, and look at what your individual resources are and how can you pull them together. And I think both of our signature projects really reflect that in a big way. And I think the projects are much stronger with us doing that in partnership than they ever could have been if just one of our agencies had chosen to do that and gone forward with it. So it's been very exciting.
Yes, I appreciate it. And then I would like to go back and talk a little bit more about the tabletop gaming approach, because it's a great example of kind of that organic sprouting that we were talking about before. Jim, how about you? How about Friendship House?
Yeah, John, thank you. And I'll talk about a signature program. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, or talk to the group about our program in the Williamsport area. But I did touch on Friendship House in the introductions a little bit, and just to give everyone a flavor, the organization is about 150 years of age, so we've been around a long time. And as I mentioned earlier, we touch on most of the Commonwealth, and we do a variety of programs that cut across all age ranges, and primarily focused on behavioral healthcare services. And really, our cornerstone program is our early intensive behavioral intervention program, which is a program that serves children 3 to 6 years of age in a very intensive way. And that cornerstone program that Friendship House offers is a center-based program in a beautiful facility in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And we always believe that program serving that youth and all those young children diagnosed with autism is a very good opportunity to catch those youth at a very early age and make a significant difference in their lives. And we always felt that. And when I got to Friendship House about 7 years ago, we felt very strongly we had to develop some strong evaluation piece for that program to really make sense of that and to really convince the people that fund our programs to continue to support those. And that's really when we got connected with the University of Scranton And I think from that connection, it kind of rolled into the ACE initiative and the collaboration. So it was that piece that was important. But we really felt, and we had programs in the Williamsport area, which were school-based programs, and we always believed there was a need for services for children with autism in the Williamsport area. But with any startup of a program, it's very difficult to do. You need the resources to do it before you can get any type of funding through the normal insurance payers that pay for those services. AllOne Foundation, through this collaborative, gave us that opportunity and really presented us with the opportunity to create that program in Williamsport. And when that was created, we started the program in a classroom setting in the Williamsport YMCA. Small setting, but we had to start out very small. Quickly ran out of space, and that's where we ran into and got to know one of our collaborative partners, Hope Industries. So Emily's on the call. We got connected with them, and now we have beautiful space, and now we're looking to dramatically expand that program. But that program, as I said, is a classroom-based program serving children diagnosed with autism, 3 to 6 years of age. It's led by a behavioral specialist, a BCBA. We have a psychologist that's consulting to the program, and those children are served and staffed one-on-one in that program. It's an exceptional program, and we've now grown in the Williamsport area. We started that off. We now have 11 children in the program, and we're thinking by March 2022, we'll probably be up to around 15 full-time kids. So if it wasn't for the collaboration with AllOne and ACE, that program wouldn't be out there today. So thank you, John.
Yeah, happy to do that, Jim. But your coming to the table really was precipitated, I guess, by the fact that there was a huge gap in services. There was an early intervention provider that had just gone out of business, I understand. So it left a great big hole in Lycoming County, a great big hole. And because you came to the ACE table at that time, you were willing to, Friendship House was willing to. Is that as far west as you go, or have you gone further west?
That's pretty much as far as we go, right there to the Williamsport area in Lycoming County.
And looking beyond your typical boundaries, it's great. So Jason, wouldn't it be great if all you had to do was run the A team at the YMCA?
Be phenomenal.
I know you provide one or two other services other than the A team, but I'd like to hear more about the A team and how you were able to lead the way for these other YMCAs to join the collaborative within the collaborative.
Sure. So thanks, John. Little overview of just what the A team is. As I spoke before, it's a group of young teenagers or older teenagers, young adults, most of which were in our group that we currently have were older teenagers, now as young adults, for how long we've been doing it for. But the idea came probably about 7 or 8 years ago, actually from a parent who has a son who was 19 years old at the time, to get together with his friends, which he doesn't have as many friends. What it was, as they're older, these kids with autism don't get invited to as much as they used to. They have older siblings, younger siblings, they kind of tag along to what they get invited to. But there comes a time where it seems like they kind of get, a little pushed off to the side. And his concern was, let's do something for these guys that can get together and maybe they can form a group and a friendship with other children with autism. So he came to us, wanted to have a meeting, and said he knew a lot of people because he participated in different groups, autism groups. And so we said, yeah, we set up our meeting. He showed up. He was the only parent that showed up. He was very disappointed. But this wasn't going to go forward. And we just said, let's do something. Let's have a night. We're going to run it like a birthday party. We'll do some food. We'll have swimming, and we'll see where it goes. And here we are 8 years later. So that's how it kind of got started. What they do is they come. What started out once a month on a Friday night to every other week to now, what are we doing this week? What are we doing this week? What are we doing this week from those guys? It's actually opened up our eyes as far as working with children with not just autism, but with special needs. But the autism spectrum is just, it's just opened so many doors for us. And I say opening doors, we partner with Jim and Friendship House for our day camp program. They send a group of kids that they want to be included in our regular activities. We partner with that for the past few summers, and unfortunately COVID has kind of hampered that a little bit, but so it's just changed the way the Y works. And as we were growing, one of the things that we see a need for from just our participants is they have a hard time finding work also. So we're in the midst of trying to start what we call our app 18 Path. It will be in our lobby. They will work, serving coffee, making little snacks, and serve whoever wants to come in and take advantage of that. And that was our idea when we had a conversation with John, who then tasked us with, let's get this 18 program into some other Ys in Northeast PA. So that's where the collaborative, inside the collaborative came about. And so our 18 program is now in 7 different Ys, 6 different Ys, 7 including ours, all which have responded greatly to the idea. It's a little challenging when you say, hey, we have an idea for you. It's going to be start working with some children with autism. What do you think about that? When they haven't done some of that in the past. And each Y stepped right up and said, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. Each program operates different nights, different days, kind of accommodate each other that are close in location. But it seems like it's just something that's going to keep going forward. And that's the vision of AllOne, to try to push autism collaboration and having some of this socialization care, which is so much needed for the parents of these groups. We did it as, let's get together for the children to have something to do and meet new friends, and it became a socialization group for the parents without us really calling it. The support that they receive from each other is remarkable. So everything just grows from each other. Yeah.
That's great. It's a really great articulation of the living, breathing nature of the objectives themselves, right? So on both the tabletop example and on the growth of the socialization, it's an example of that mutually reinforcing activities and how they can lead to better achievement of that collective impact. A couple of things about what Jason just shared is another thing that kind of outside of our objectives, but through the constant continuous communication of ACE, as they got the word out in all corners of Northeastern and North Central Pennsylvania, we started to hear back from folks about being interested in it and how all of this was working and such. And it really brought the message back to the ACE folks, things that this can't be yet another example of about us without us. So nowhere in our formal objectives does it say that the folks we strive to serve need to be the strongest voice at the table, but the socialization program of the Ys, the tabletop idea, even our look in and of itself, we switched in the middle of the project itself because some in the ASD community were turned off by, at the very least, some of the images we were using to identify ourselves. So it's when you're talking about collective impact, it's really, really important to have that common agenda and the shared measurements and all that. But it's also vital to listen to those that you strive to serve, react and act as best you can, based on that. And I think that the tabletop, well, and you alluded to it before, we were in the middle of the program, and Mary Carol Donahoe, who's the program officer here at AllOne Foundation and Charities, was reporting to me about all these really great conversations about how to do things differently and more interestingly, and to listen to the people that we strive to serve. And this tabletop gaming concept came up. Again, quick aside, how important it is from a leadership standpoint to be open to all things. When that idea was first brought to me about setting up these tabletop gaming opportunities, I couldn't see it at all. And most importantly, how am I going to sell this, for lack of a better term, to my leadership and to the leadership of the other 6 funding collaborators? And frankly, I thought, I think we've gone a step too far here. Because I don't know, I can't see how our collective impact is being advanced through Dungeons and Dragons or whatever else it was that I couldn't see, right? But gratefully, Mary Carol, you all were excellent in articulating to those that needed to hear it how this is all going to work, and the therapeutic benefits of it, and the clinical benefits that can be derived from it. But most importantly, how important it is to listen to those you strive to serve. And the tabletop gaming opportunity has really kind of risen to the top of what we use as an example of how the ACE concept is working best. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and how it got past the old guy's brain?
Sure. Well, what I think the first thing I really like to mention is just going back a little bit to what you said about the importance of listening to all different points of view and having some of those difficult and challenging conversations, which I really think the collaborative did. I think when we first began, there was a lot of, who are you? Why are you here? Why is it important? What's our point? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Oh, I don't really agree with you. I don't really think that you know it. You know, like there was definitely all of those things that people talk about why they don't like collaboratives. That definitely happened. You know, it was like the storming and norming part of the group. Like we all had to figure out who we were, and we all had to be able to talk. And then I think as relationships built, we really did have that opportunity to like, what's going on and who are we? And I think that a really important part, and the reason why I want to highlight it, because I think it's just so critical, is we really did stop and say, okay, so we're the providers, but if we don't connect with the people we're providing to, and if we don't make sure that self-advocates and people with disabilities have a voice in this, then we have no business doing this. Exactly. And I think we really, as a collaborative, stopped and said, okay, wait a minute, we need to do this. And that was really critical. And I think it really changed the trajectory of who we were and where we were going and what we were doing. And within that context, I think TTRPG came into being. And it was definitely a little bit out there. And I want to defer to Emily a little bit because it's really kind of Emily's origin story. Because I mentioned earlier in the conversation that there were 4 or 5 of us that were meeting on a regular basis and really doing serious brainstorming, like what's out there, what can we do, who are we, what is our expertise? And then Emily came through a very personal experience, stumbled into the Bodana group, who is the group of, who's that outside group that's not part of the collaborative that we connected with, and went to visit them and listen to who they were and what they did. And we were like blown away by the potential of the program. So I'm going to stop because now I'm going to keep talking and then Emily will have nothing to say. So let me
that couldn't happen. I would still find other things to talk about. Yeah, so in our group of talking together, at one point I started talking about how my son, who is a very He was very by the book, black and white. He only wanted to read books about geography or fact-driven things. He hated going to the library and being read a chapter book. He just was like, this is pointless. He thinks imagination is dumb. And then all of a sudden, you know, I started trying to get him to play games with me. And I'm not I don't know the best way to say this. I'm not super nerdy when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. My brother-in-law was actually really into it, and he started listening in on it, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden he wants to start playing Dungeons and Dragons at like 9 years old. And I'm like, this is so out of character for him. And I was telling the collaborative group about this, about how he's like blossoming into this other child. Like all of a sudden he's thinking imaginatively, he's drawing, which is like, I've never seen him put pen to paper before. Everything he wants to do is via text or over a screen. You know, he's all of a sudden, his creative mind has been unlocked, and he's furiously thinking through scenarios that he could use in this role-playing game. And after talking about it with this group, they were like, there's something here. Like this is not an uncommon thing where you could take, if you just see where people are in their chosen place of growth, and then you just kind of ride that wave with them, there's possibilities there. So being able to connect with the Bodana group, which basically they are the premier purveyors of training therapists in all sorts of tabletop role-playing games. It doesn't have to be Dungeons and Dragons. There's all sorts of games out there that get kids involved. They work outside of people with ID. They work with children with trauma that are working through the death of a parent. They'll use role-playing games to work through that. So they've done it through a myriad of different avenues. But we went to them and said, we could do something with this. What could you bring to the table? What can we give you? How could you train us to then in turn start doing this through our hubs? And that was really the impetus of what we've now been able to figure out the acronym after like a year and a half, because it's TTRPG is Therapeutic Tabletop Role-Playing Project, for lack of a better way to know how to describe it. We basically have been able to take research-based therapeutic intervention that's designed to support social communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and self-regulation skills for transitional youth, which has just been very exciting. And actually, despite the pandemic, we've been able to grow this better because through Zoom, now we can get rural kids that would not be able to come meet on a Wednesday night without an hour and a half drive. We've been able to capture a much broader group of students. And even for those that want to do in person, we think we're going to largely stay on the Zoom platform just because we have a much broader impact with participants. So it's actually, we've been able to ride the waves of the shortcomings, and us trying to build this plane as it's taking off the tarmac, which has also been, I would say, as far as collaborative concerns goes, it's been great partnering with Anne and then Sandy Kirshner, because we all are kind of more like, let's roll with it. Let's not overthink it. Let's just start walking and we'll put it together as it comes. And that's worked really well for us in our partnership in a little group doing this, and the early childhood advocacy project that has really aided with us being like, well, let's not get too worked up. If we hit roadblocks, we'll figure out a way to work around it. And it's been a really great collaborative group that I would have never met, had it not been for ACE. There's no way any of this would have happened.
Yeah, that's very true. And then, so I think one of the things we discovered is that we're all risk takers, and we are really comfortable with operating without a lot of clarity, which is kind of how we started when we first started it. But I will say, being true to some of the objectives and the principles of what the collaborative started with, we were very cognizant of the fact that this had to be a clinically a sound program, that we had to be able to collect data, that we had to be able to demonstrate that participants who are involved in the gaming, we're making progress and we're doing that. So Sandy has really clinical. Sandy's from Children's Resource Center, and she has extensive clinical background. I have a really long history of doing a lot of clinical work. Both of us had experience in working with the ASD population from in a clinical role. So we, and although I should say Sandy really took the leadership part in this of coming up with assessments, social skills assessments, so we create baselines for kids and we follow up and we measure progress and we're collecting data. So, and we've simplified what the Bodama group does, because they really do address all therapeutic issues like trauma-based things. And we really kept ours much more in scope with what the collaborative principles were, which was to work on social and communication skills. So those are our primary goals that we work on. Baselines are established. There's a therapist at every single, a master's level clinician in every group, along with a game master. Those of us who are clinicians have come to appreciate and have high regard and respect for game masters, and since we've all realized we're really bad at it and we really need to stick to our clinical role and not do anything else. But everyone's received over 40 hours of training who does the group. So as much as we are risk takers and we haven't always exactly known where this is going to take us, we have been extremely, I think, cognizant of the fact that we're working with public monies and we need to be responsible and we have an ethical obligation to the people that we serve to do the best we can. So I think we really have been able to do that as well and still have an incredible amount of fun while we're doing it. And we are in our 7th month, I think, of running groups. So we still have teenagers and young adults coming in on a weekly basis, coming in Zoom primarily, on a weekly basis, very engaged in a 2 to 3 hour group. That's been, they still come and they haven't gotten tired of us. They're not sick of it. We're in our 2nd game now, and I think most of us will be moving to a 3rd game, which will be Dungeons and Dragons in the next couple of months. We've learned that people like roles, that most people are doing better with role-based games than more flexible games that provide some boundaries and safety. So it's been, and then there has been one really exciting development that I'll let Emily talk about, which was the groups that we have are very heterogeneous, which makes it challenging. So we have some really advanced gamers who are very, very skilled. And we've had a lot of people that are not at all. We have some people very invested in game. We have some people that are very invested in the relationships that they're making and the friendships. So there's always like work to pull all of that together. But one of the things that we learned that happened organically was that we did have some commonalities with some of the members who were advanced gamers. And I'll turn it over to Emily for you to talk a little bit more about that.
So in being able to figure out with the broad spectrum of what ASD is, there have been groups that come together, like Ann said, that are more there to try to help build core socialization skills, and others who really want to get into the problem solving management of the game itself and the real life scenarios that you end up creating and being able to work through in a safe environment. So in being able to kind of see where these young adults and kids are at, we kind of ended up moving them around and paired them with specific therapists that either have a lot more experience with that. And now we have groups that are actually creating game masters of the students. So now they are taking the critical thinking that they were applying for themselves and now being able to think about it with the group around them, which is just an amazing breakthrough for any young adult on the spectrum to be able to be thinking critically outside of their own dilemmas and thinking about how that might be affecting this person and that person, and then creating an entire world and scenario that they will insert others in and have to be thinking for them in every move that they're making. So now we actually have almost like a level 2 game going where they're now being able to train these students to become game masters themselves and host their own TTRPG games within TTRPG games, which is very meta. But that's kind of what the collaborative is anyway. I mean, based on what Jason is, a collaborative within a collaborative. And I mean, this kind of just is where this is going year 3, right? So, so yeah, it's been a really neat project that we're really proud of.
Yeah. And that was a very organic part of just like, during our monthly meetings, we meet, the partners in the project meet weekly, but then clinicians meet monthly. And just through all of the different conversations, we realized we had a lot of sophisticated game players who showed a lot of natural leadership skills. And we were like, let's figure out how to make that work. Let's do something with it. And we have a really great game master and a really great clinician who was able to devote the time. So they meet weekly for 3 hours, which is unbelievable to me that they're spending 3 hours playing a game. But these folks are really engaged and they're really excited. And again, they're expanding their social network. They're expanding their skill set. They're doing a lot of socialization, communication, and critical thinking, as Emily mentioned. So that was that's been an unexpected bonus of this project. Like that wasn't in our original vision. We didn't really think about that. We're not that brilliant, but it turns out that the folks that we're working with are, and they led us right to where we needed to go. So,
yep. So I think that it's a perfect articulation of what happens when people get together. So if we were at Harvard right now, they would say collective impact approaches have the potential to leverage ecosystem resources to address complex problems. We're not at Harvard right now, we're here. And ACE is a living, breathing articulation of what happens when good, fun, smart people get together and share their own expertise. And I think I think ACE in general is a great example of collective impact. I think what you all have been able to achieve, tabletop and collectives within, or collaboratives within collaboratives, and the A team, and filling the gaps in services, mostly by sticking to that clear common agenda, those common objectives, is really, really quite remarkable. And that's why we wanted to highlight in the conversation today at this conference. So I think we're coming up, Dr. Pellegrino, I think we're coming up on an hour here. So I'm happy to ask the panelists maybe in a minute if you have any kind of overview thoughts, and then turn it back over to you.
That sounds good.
How about it, Jim, Jason, any?
Yeah, John, I guess just some final thoughts. I mean, I think of, our future in the work that we do. Collaborations like this are critically important. And, our future is really dependent on that. So, I mean, hats off to the foundation pulling this together and getting us partners together to really work together for the future. So appreciate that. And I think it's something we'll continue, and look forward to our future successes.
Thanks, Jim. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, and final thoughts too. I mean, I agree with everything Jim just said. As far as collaboration goes, everything we do anymore these days in all aspects of the why is collaboration. Collaboration is huge. Why reinvent the wheel? Why do something else that somebody's doing? Let's get together. Let's put it together. Let's move forward and try to do things together. It serves a whole greater group of participants, and it's just a no-brainer in these days. So I thank you, and I thank everybody on the panel. Great conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about you, Ann?
It's hard to follow up Jim and Jason. They've said a lot, but so I'll just restate. I think we've been afforded an incredible opportunity. I think that we all know that there are service gaps. We all know that this is a population that's underserved, and we've really been given an opportunity to creatively approach it and be as strong as we can collectively be which is much stronger than we would be individually. And that's been very exciting. So thank you.
Emily?
Echoing all of that, I just also think that in moving forward, being able to have that great foot forward with understanding how to advocate for those on the spectrum, and also knowing how to better integrate within our local communities. I'm really excited to see what other providers will get to meet next, and also really just excited to be able to help promote where we are and how much progress we have made, and how, you know, collectively, I think that we really are onto something huge, and it should be looked at by Harvard. It should be looked at on a larger scale, because I think that there's a lot that could be pulled away on a national level.
I just, many of you have been so generous in pointing out that it was AllOne Foundation and Charities that kind of took the lead on that, so that I'm uniquely qualified to take credit for all of it, by all means. But the fact of the matter is, I started off by telling you that it's a very personal, in this particular incarnation of our attempt at collective impact. It's a very personal thing for the leaders of AllOne Foundation and Charities. And I really, really have to tip my hat to them, our board chair, Attorney John Moses, and his colleagues on the leadership of AllOne Foundation and Charities, because, you know, talking about taking a vision to reality, they really saw the biggest picture as to how we can actually have a measurable impact if the resources are there and if the resources are put together in the right way. So I say thanks to them and to the other partners, the other philanthropic partners at the table. And to you, Deb Pellegrino, and to the University of Scranton for coming to the table, coming back to the table, staying at the table, and even in this conference, providing the table for us all to come to. We really appreciate your efforts on ACE for sure, but we appreciate all of your efforts in striving to serve the folks of the disabilities community. Finally, what I would like to say about ACE and about our work is that, you know, sometimes, as was mentioned, Harvard should be staring at us or studying us, and the rest of the world should be watching what we're doing. I absolutely agree that that's the case. But the fact of the matter is, it's all of your individual contributions that make this collective impact possible. And if there's a personal mission statement that I live by, it's what Bobby Kennedy said a long time ago. And he said that every time a person stands up against an injustice or simply acts to improve the lot of others, that person sets forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples can create a current so strong as to tear down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. So we've just spent the last hour talking about this really great effort, this collective impact, but it isn't possible without those tiny ripples of hope. So I really want to express my personal appreciation to the folks in the ACE Collaborative for what you do every minute of every day. And that's how we get to this collective impact. So Deb, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, John, that was well stated. And to all the panelists, you're amazing. And as John said, it's doable. Do not be afraid. And the shared measurements that we've done in those 9 essential outcomes that we constantly measure, we constantly reflect. We're saying, how can we improve? How can we use our imagination? So we would like to invite all the participants of this conference. If you would like to know more about ACE, go to our website, ACCE, just put in Autism Collaborative Centers of Excellence. We also have Facebook followers. We're on social media. So we would tell you, come join us and we can share any of our resources with you. Nationwide, globally, we invite all of you to come and take part so that we can all together improve our network of friends, because that's how we grow. When I think about, I heard during a pandemic, we still made this happen, but there's things that we learned from the pandemic, and you so mentioned it. You know, our town hall meetings, a lot of them were virtual, and they will continue to be virtual because we can reach out to not only people in our cities, but in our rural areas as well, which is so important. So to all of you participants, we invite you to join our collaborative. So watch us, sign up, join our Facebook followers, and get on our email list, and we will share everything with you. So to the ACE partners, to the 24 people on the projects, the organizations, the communities, it's together we are stronger. So I thank even Senator Casey in the state of Pennsylvania, who also supports us. So thank you all to Ed and Patricia Leahy, honorary chairpersons of this conference. ACE has really made a difference. Thank you, AllOne. Thank you, each one of you, from Ann, Jim, Jason, Emily, and John. Thank you very much for this hour.
Thank you very much, Deb.
Yeah.
Thank you.